Welcome to this APC hosted discussion. I am pleased to welcome you all. My name is Sierra Jackson. I am a sales manager for APC Ingredients. With the upcoming removal of zinc oxide, we have invited several experts to discuss the challenges during this transition. Our group consists of Dan Bussiers, a nutritionist from Group Sorez, which offers consulting services in swine production and distribution of breeding stock, and sales of nutritional products. Group Sorez influences the feeding of more than 5.5 million pigs annually. Another nutritionist with us today is Dr. Maliki Young, President and Manager of Nutrition and Research for Gowans Feed Consulting. Gowans helps implement the latest nutrition and production technologies for producers to maximize their profitability. We also have a veterinarian with us, Dr. Kurt Pregshus. Kurt started Precision Veterinary Services in Alberta in 2019. Kurt has worked extensively in swine medicine throughout Western Canada during his career. In addition to the group, we have invited Dr. Alfons Jansman, Senior Scientist at Wageningen Livestock Research in the Netherlands, to provide his expertise on zinc oxide mitigation. His main areas of expertise are the nutritional evaluation of feed ingredients, digestive physiology in pigs, amino acid requirements and metabolism, and nutrition and health in pigs and poultry. During the discussion, I will ask a series of questions, and as a group, we will collectively discuss each. Let's get started. The first question is directed to Dr. Jansman. Why are countries moving to ban zinc oxide?
Yes, thank you for the question. Actually, there's a quite long history in Europe, in Western Europe, and in the EU with regard to the reduction of zinc and zinc oxide in diets for pigs. And generally, what is behind are environmental concerns related to the excretion of heavy metals, including zinc, in the environment. We do see, especially in areas of intensive animal production, that soils have become loaded with copper and zinc, and that's the reason measures have been taken at national and European level to bring down levels of copper and zinc in the diet. So on the one hand, we have regulation in the EU about the regular use of zinc in diets for pigs to meet the requirements for these elements by pigs and other farm animal species. And then the point about zinc oxide is that it was allowed in some countries in the EU to use on veterinary prescription to combat problems with post-weaning diarrhea in piglets. Actually, it was always forbidden in the Netherlands to use zinc oxide for this purpose, so we do not have a history on that. But in some other European countries like Belgium, UK, and Denmark, they have a history of using zinc oxide as a veterinary treatment to combat post-weaning diarrhea. So the situation is rather different in the different countries. We are not dealing with issues related to the ban on zinc oxide by mid-2022, so next year. While some other countries do have issues there because they might be a little bit less prepared for this change.
I think it would also, to add to Dr. Jansman's comments, it would be fair to say that public opinion drives a lot of things in Europe, particularly on feed additives. So I think that's also a driving factor included here, in addition to the use of excess production in Europe, like in the high density in some of these smaller countries, is also driving the decision to remove zinc oxide, and the lack of farmland to spread the manure on, where they build up in the soil, is also playing a big weighing factor in here as well.
And there's also the antibiotic resistance component that is part of also the challenge that we have, or some of the concern of the industry and people around the use of zinc. Dr. Jansman, what will be the basal level of zinc that will be allowed? We talk about high level of zinc used in some country in Europe. What will be the minimum or maximum level that will be allowed? What is allowed in Netherlands and other countries? Are we talking about 150, 200 ppm of zinc? And same thing for copper as well.
Yeah, The maximum level in diets for zinc in piglets will be 150 ppm, milligrams per kilogram, and for growing pigs 100 milligrams per kilogram. And for copper, it's also 150 milligrams per kilogram up to an age of 4 weeks post-weaning, and thereafter it will be or is 100 milligram per kilogram for copper. And these levels have gone down throughout the past 2 decades because, as I just mentioned, at the European level, EU level, there is a very critical view on the excretion of these minerals in the manure, which leads to serious concerns. And as you, Malachy, indicated, also consumers are aware of, let's say, the potential, the contribution of animal production in the environmental load, so not only of nitrogen and ammonia, but certainly also of these minerals. So that makes it that it is high in the political discussions also in the at the European level. So,
Dr. Jansman, with excuse me, with AMU antimicrobial usage being such a high publicity topic as well, have you seen an impact on antimicrobial usage or growth performance or mortality in the nurseries, sort of as a result of the removal of zinc oxide or lowering levels?
Yeah, well, I think in at least that is the concern in countries which still use zinc oxide, that it will have a negative influence on the antibiotic use, and there will be more concerns about health status of piglets in the post-weaning phase. So as we did not have that history, I cannot tell you or answer this question from a Dutch perspective. But we also have already a quite long history in bringing down the use of antibiotics in the animal production sector. Over the past, let's say 10 years, we had an active program initiated by the government and supported by all stakeholders in the animal production sector to really bring down antibiotic use. And actually we have been quite successful in bringing down the antibiotic use by about 50% over the last 10 years. So although we were not using the zinc oxide, we were still able to bring down antibiotic use also in the pig sector. But as we have a look in practice, the piglet phase is a phase which consumes still antibiotics, and we are trying to bring that down even further.
I think one last comment we can make on that point as well is that other countries are also following the same path. We talk about China, although China, it's always hard to understand what they do exactly. But being involved in China a bit with some group over there, they have a restriction as well on using the level of zinc they can use in those nursery diet, which we think China will not be the first country to look at those things. But they have concern as well. So it's not something just to the European country. Canada, North America will have to face that as well sooner than later, but other countries as well. And in Canada, we've talked about that with Malachy in the past. We don't know exactly when we're going to have to go from high to low level of zinc. There's going to be a new CFI table 4 guideline that should be put together sooner than later. But we don't have the date and we don't have the level yet. But we hear about that 150, 200 ppm of zinc as the people in Europe are doing. It wouldn't be a surprise because we're going to look at what is done elsewhere. And I think Health Canada and CFI will apply the same type of maximum level as well for us in Canada.
But I think it's also important to understand we're looking at a different situation in terms of, and even within Canada itself, the density of pig production and the land available to spread the manure is quite different. If you compare the west to the east, it's quite different than the land available. And historically, CFIA has been pretty slow. The last changes we've had on zinc level was in 1983 on the table 4 level. So it's not something that changes a lot, and there's a lot of public pressure here in Canada on this.
Yeah, but what I heard about talking to CFI people is that Health Canada is putting pressure on the antibiotic resistance. So there's the environmental aspect, which we know it's not a that big of a deal for us because of the land base and the density of production versus Europe. But the Health Canada point about the maximum level for the antibiotic resistant is putting a lot of pressure on CFI as well. So there's that angle as well that, I don't know, as Maliki said, government is really slow to make those change, and we're going to have a transition period. It's not going to happen overnight, but still, we think over the next couple of years, we're going to have to face some new level on that end for sure.
Perfect, thank you. The second question is directed towards Dr. Kurt Pregtius. How will the removal of zinc oxide impact pig health and production, and what is the potential financial impact on swine producers in Canada?
Yeah, thanks, Sierra. So as we kind of alluded to, the main zinc oxide is kind of well known for its antimicrobial effect, really with the primary health impact for post-weaning diarrhea, and specifically targeting E. coli. So the main driver of removal of zinc oxide will be the negative impacts on kind of that first couple weeks post-weaning and the kind of diarrhea impact there. So the big things we'd expect to see or potentially see would be increased post-weaning diarrhea, which translates into kind of slower growth, smaller pigs at the end of the nursery phase. You could see increased mortality. Obviously, if you have to change your diets to sort of replace the effects of zinc oxide, you'll have increased costs in feed additives or other interventions to kind of therapeutic antibiotics if you have more sick pigs. All these things are potentially outcomes. And then obviously, if you're more diarrhea or more challenged with diarrhea, you could have other health challenges as well. So it's not like it's a magic bullet and we're going to remove the magic bullet, but these are all, it's another tool that is kind of impacting the overall health of the pig. And if we remove them, then yeah, we're going to have to find other interventions. The financial impact, that's obviously the kicker we're all here, but that's going to be pretty variable, I would say, depending on the health status of the farm. So if the health status and the kind of gut health has been maintained pretty stable, it'll have less impact, of course, whereas farms that have major health challenges and diarrhea challenges right now with zinc, it's going to be, it's not going to get better without it, likely. So yeah, there'll be quite a big difference. But probably, I'm sure Maliki and Dan, you can probably comment on some of the trials you've done to kind of directly tie it back into financial impact. Sure.
I know, yeah, we have done a number of trials here in the last few years, probably 3 to 4 trials looking at low and removal of zinc completely just to the 150 ppm versus our therapeutic levels. And pretty consistently, we see probably a kilo at the end of the nursery, about 60 days of age, loss in weight at that period. So it's pretty significant what we give up, and it's very effective and even in systems that are high health, that we don't have big challenge, we do see a significant loss in production.
Yeah, I just want to add on that. We also did a lot of trial over the last 10 years mostly, about 10 trials we did in our research nursery in Manitoba and Quebec. We did see some big impact at some time. Some other case we were able to maintain performance pretty well. We haven't been going to 150 ppm. We did 250 and 500 ppm as the low zinc treatment. So maybe the 150 could be another challenge on top of that. So that's something we're going to have to look at. But overall, like Kurt said, and Maliki, it's highly variable. You know, you can be in a big mess, or you can do pretty good if you have a good management, good health, weaning age. So that's why we're going to come back towards a discussion about, you know, what needs to be done to help to prevent the issue or reduce the issue. So, but financially, it could be up to $1, $2 a pigs, and at some case it could be almost zero if everything else is perfect. But again, it's going to be highly variable, and the mortality can be a big driver as well. As Kurt said, if you struggle with E. coli today and you have big challenge, wonder what will happen when we're going to take out the zinc. There's going to be probably more challenge. So, question for you, Kurt. What on the health side? You know, we'll talk about nutrition, Maliki and I a bit more, and health side. What you think you guys, the vet group, needs to can do, or what we need to think about already to be prepared for that transition?
Yeah, great question. So I think, well, I'm a believer in kind of preventative medicine. That's kind of my whole mindset, I guess. So if we can kind of think ahead and plan ahead and to overall health of the herd, stabilize health of the herd, you can kind of prevent a lot of issues down the line. And so I think many feed companies and producers are already having these discussions that this is coming down the pipe. And so we're already looking for solutions. I think the big ones to me, like some products and stuff that we are doing currently, obviously, if there's a severe challenge with post-wean diarrhea, you can have kind of piglet vaccines for E. coli specifically to kind of reduce that challenge, and that can be effective depending on the strain of E. coli you're dealing with. I would say if you manage the sow herd well, you vaccinate your sows really well for E. coli, you do awesome colostrum management and piglet care, then you kind of reduce your E. coli challenge in your farrowing crates. And so when they're weaned, already you have a better quality, less health challenged animal, better gut health. Again, if you're dealing with other enteric pathogens like rotavirus, we know that's a big one in our world today, or coccidiosis, for example. If you can control those, again, we can reduce the impact. We've done, like with water acidification is another tool we've used, I would say, especially in the first 2 weeks after weaning. That's when you really see the impact, and that's primarily focused on post-weaning diarrhea as well, and kind of getting those pigs transition from a milk to the feed. So those are some of the kind of interventions we're doing now. And the biggest thing is to work with trial and error is really what it boils down to. You're going to have to try it. I always say try it now when we still have the tool available so we can put it back in at least. And so we try removing it or lowering it, see what other options, solutions we need to do, kind of working together with nutrition, like you and Dan and Maliki and everybody, to kind of work together to come up with the right solutions. And then if it doesn't work, we put it back in, stabilize things again, and then try it again. And to try to do that before we kind of have it removed and banned, and then we don't have the tool, and then it's a health emergency. And then I'm putting out fires, which I don't want to do, and neither producer that loses as well. So
I would, when I may add to that, I think in the beginning also, when the antimicrobial growth promoters were forbidden in the EU, then in the beginning it was the assumption that the pathogenic E. coli was the cause of post-weaning diarrhea, but more and more we realized that it is a multifactorial issue. So also in finding replacement for the zinc oxide, we should not only focus at its enteropathogenic E. coli. It's really a multifactorial issue. So also let's say the capacity of the piglet to deal with all kinds of pathogens, the development of the immune system. So let's say the robustness of the animal to deal with this changing conditions is a very important one. We should certainly not forget. So that's what I want to add on this.
Salmonella as well, of course. All those.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the other part I think of, which Kurt touched on a little bit here, from a management perspective, I think becomes bigger. Small things become bigger in this case as we pull zinc oxide out. Your sanitation of your rooms in farrowing and in nursery become a big deal. Proper drying, proper setup of these rooms. So the less stress on the pig at weaning becomes really important, because the more stress and challenge on the pig, there's more risk they're going to break down. It's very, very clear. The other things, I think, individual animal care, stockmanship within the barn, as far as individual treatment, removing these pigs finding them early, pulling them to a recovery pen becomes, again, very important to turn these pigs around and get them back on track. So there's a lot of the management side to me will become equally important as the nutrition side, that we step in a timely fashion to identify these animals that are struggling. And it's not always going to be the smallest pig in the pen. It's going to be typically, we can see it's a bigger pigs that are usually on the front teat of mom getting a full belly of milk, and when he hits the nursery, it's a big shock to him. He has to learn how to live off dry feed, and his other litter mates maybe that had less milk and did eat some creep feed start off a lot better. And then the other one I think that gets quite a bit of attention today, which Kurt touched on, was water, and water acidification definitely I think is a really good tool to look at. But the other one we tend to forget a little bit about is waterline cleaning and sanitation. That's a really important one. I think that we tend to overlook a little bit. We take for granted. A lot of times water is there and the quality is there, but a lot of times we're not sanitizing these lines, cleaning these lines frequently enough, and there is a buildup of bugs and stuff in those lines that will hamper and affect production as well.
Yeah, no question. Weanage, I think, is if we can manage weanage and get a better quality pig with a better gut, like we have lots of off farms that I work with, it's huge impact. But there's certain farms we don't have that luxury, I guess. They're weaning those 18, 19, 20-day-old pigs. It's a different game. So.
Yeah, but that's a difference between US and Canada compared to Europe, where we wean the piglets at an age of close to 4 weeks rather than at 3 weeks. So that's at least one of the reasons that we are quite successful, let's say, in making this transition, with relatively low antibiotic use and can do without zinc oxide, as we have proven over the past decade. So this is certainly a point which links to the point I was just making about the capacity of the pig to deal with these challenging conditions. These very young piglets most likely will have more difficulties in this transition period compared to the ones which are slightly more robust because of the fact that they have 1 more week to be with the sow. And another interesting point, maybe that's it was just mentioned, is the variation in response to any kind of intervention as tested as alternatives. Sometimes we test intervention under controlled conditions in an experimental setting, and then when you compare the effects on a practical farm, results can be rather different, and it's sometimes quite difficult to find the reason behind. But the variation in response between farms, to get more information on that, I think that is a kind of next step to make, because we need precision interventions depending on the conditions on the farm and the management, and to find a general replacement for something we do routinely, whatever it may be, including zinc oxide in some parts of the world, that might not be the solution. At least that's my impression.
Yes, thank you. So that was a very good transition into our next question that is directed towards our nutritionists, Dr. Dan Bussiers and Dr. Malachi Young. What nutritional or other animal health options are available to replace zinc oxide?
Okay, so I can start off on that, and I think it's a pretty large question. One thing I want to say is that there's no magic tricks. There's no one thing that will fix the issue or replace zinc. And one thing I want to say is that everything we do today with zinc being able to be used in our diet, we do it because we still have some issues sometimes with scour and with post-weaning diarrhea. So my point is that even though we have zinc today available as a tool, we should look at all the things we've talked about: weaning age, quality of the pigs at weaning, transportation, sanitation, all the things that matter to bring the quality of the pigs better. But without zinc, I think we all mentioned about that, we won't have that safety net or that band-aid, and those lack of management or lack of things that we should do will show more of a need to be an issue. So that's the thing I want to say, that today we should also look at all those things. Even though we have zinc, it's not about waiting in 2-3 years from now to do those things. It's really important to emphasize those management, nutritional intervention right away. In terms of feed, I think we can help, and like Malachi said, we don't want to be blamed for all the issue without the zinc. We want to work as a group, but I think there's everything. There's the management, the vet side, the health side, and the farm people, and the nutrition side. On the feed side, in our case, we have changed our approach about how we feed nursery pigs 2-3 years ago. Been using a lower protein diet, try to reduce the protein, which is an issue sometimes. Too much protein can end up in the hindgut and be a substrate for the bad bugs to grow on it. So we want to make sure we have quality protein, lower protein in our diet, early wean diet, I will say. Fiber, we are using fiber now trying to help the gut health of the pigs. We dilute the diet, lower energy, and what we found is that we're able, by doing that, to improve feed intake. Even though we feed a less dense diet, those pigs will eat more. We have, I guess, a misconception that to those pigs, because they don't eat a lot, we need to give them a lot of gravy, a lot of goodies, a lot of energy, a lot of fat, a lot of protein. But I think sometimes it's probably overdoing it. We have to be careful. So doing a diet that is less protein, less energy, feed intake is better, or you can get better feed intake, which is good for the villi development and gut health. So the focus on the first 2-3 weeks diet, with a mindset change versus what we were doing 5-10 years ago, I think that's key. And honestly, Dr. Jensen mentioned about it. We went back and we look at what the Dutch are doing. And that's what they do. They feed low protein, low energy, fiber in the diet, which is a bit against what we used to do in North America 5-10 years ago. So just maybe rethink. It's not about feed additive, it's about feed concept and feed program and how you feed your pigs. With that being said, acidification of the diet, other product we know can be useful as well, medium chain fatty acid, and every feed company have their own recipe or their own magic product, which is fine. There's a lot of good product on the market. Doing research on commercial pigs, not doing research on pigs that are perfectly clean, because you're going to be disappointed, as Dr. Jensen said, when you're going to move to a commercial application. So we do research in commercial barn, although they are well managed, they may be a bit better health sometimes. At least that's give us a bit of a better feeling about what could happen commercially down the road. But still, case by case, you can have a success with one feed program in one farm, but in other case, you can have to do things a bit different. So I think all the feeding is important, and everything pre-weaning. We've talked about that, quality of the pigs, creep feeding, making sure the pigs recognize feed before they get weaned. If you wean at 20, 21 days, it's a bit of a challenge to get those pigs eating the creep feed. If you wean at 25, 26, 28 days, it's a bit easier. But with that being said, I truly believe the creep feeding, or the recognition of feed for the pigs before you get weaned, it's really important for the transition. So again, coming back to the fact that we have to start thinking about it right away, because it could be helpful even if we have zinc available. It's just going to be more helpful when we won't have zinc.
Yes, just to add, I guess, a little bit on to what Dan has covered off. There is, a number of strategies, as you touched on, and just to, I guess, touch on a little bit in more depth on one or two of those. The low crude protein diets has been used in Europe for many years, and I know experience of some of my colleagues working in Europe and in Russia. They have used low crude protein diets in our first couple of diets in the nursery, and again, they give up a little bit of performance in that first few weeks after weaning, but those pigs compensate in the subsequent diets after that. So really, instead of putting in a lot more protein to drive better growth rate and performance, not which we do, but we also create more challenges. And where there is more challenge in the pig at weaning, some burns will get away with it and we won't have any challenge. But again, when zinc is pulled out, I think we're going to see more issues where you try to push those high spec diets. But definitely the lower protein diets, synthetic or crystalline amino acids, are very cost effective, especially when you formulate on a net energy basis. They pull into the rations very cost effectively and help pull down the protein level in those diets. So crude protein, formulating on lower crude protein diets is definitely one, and it's been a success in Europe. It'd be a strategy that has worked very well. A couple other things important to keep in mind, looking at formulating based on acid binding capacity of the diet. There are certain ingredients which are high buffers and have a negative impact on performance of those animals right after weaning. So really formulating to reduce the buffering capacity of our diets. There's enough information. I think it's been happening in mainland Europe for a while, formulating based on acid binding with good results. And zinc is one of those ingredients that has a high acid binding capacity. So actually removal from the diet is in our favor, so which is a positive thing. The other things that I think are really important and will become more important is the ingredients we're using, the quality of the ingredients we're using in those early starter diets. They need to be highly digestible, consistent, and is very important as far as getting those pigs up on feed. Especially with the younger weaning age, those pigs are very sensitive to differences in quality of ingredients, which we'll see it in terms of feed intake and growth rate in that first couple of weeks after weaning. weaning. So knowing the source of these ingredients, like for example, on your milk products, that they're edible grade whey powder or whey permeate or that, and also the quality of the fish meal or your soya extract products you're using, or especially soya products you're using, will be important. Other things I think that will also become important is the processing of the diet, a particle size. Like a lot of historically, from many years ago when I worked in Ireland, we had specialty facilities to make early starter feeds. They were dedicated only for starter feeds, whereas here in North America, most of our creep feeds or starter feeds are made in commercial plants. A lot of these plants are set up to make high volume, big volume feeds. So it's a different product we're making. The specialty feeds are grind to smaller particle size, you typically with a smaller pellet than that. There is some of them available out here in Western Canada, but not a whole lot. But the consistency of the product you get to the pig is really important. The other one we should touch on a little bit is also the feed budgets. Is potentially a tool we can use as far as we pull out zinc. Potentially, we can feed a little bit more of those earlier starter diets. We tend to, in North America, tend to be very cost sensitive in those early diets. But as the pigs or zinc is removed, or if there is more challenge, we can adjust our days on those early diets to trying to boost those pigs to get them going in the early post-weaning period.
Just want to add one point about Maraki's comment on the APC, acid binding capacity. The other thing that we have to consider is high level of calcium carbonate in the diet. We do see some early wean diets sometimes with high level of calcium, and calcium is a high buffering capacity. And we did some work in some phase 1 diet where we took out the calcium, no more calcium added, and we followed those pigs up to the end of nursery, and we did some body scan to look at the bone mineralization. And we found that by doing the low calcium or no calcium added in the first 10 days, there was no issue on bone mineralization if you have a good diet afterward. So just helping to set the mind about lowering the ABC of the diet, not overloading the diet with zinc oxide, as you said, Meraki is increasing the ABC, calcium carbonate, and other ingredients like that. So I think it's a good point about helping with the pH reduction, and also along with water pH monitoring or adjustment, that's working all together as well. So yeah, and the protein quality, as you said, it's really important as well. We need to look at that and make sure that we feed a good quality diet to those pigs. The last point I want to mention about, some people are doing very interesting work right now on pig socialization, looking at getting pigs out of their farrowing crate 2-3 days after farrowing. So you open the farrowing crate, and instead of having a sow with 12 pigs, you have 20 sow with 288 pigs that go around and see the other sow commingle, socialize between each other. And there's some data being done, some work being done in US right now with large system, and also in Europe. I've seen some data, and that helped the pigs to do better after weaning because there's less stress. The socialization of the pigs pre-weaning will help to do the transition post-weaning. So all those management things that we know about or may not all know about, like I said, it's really important to go back to the basic and make sure we can implement those things.
Yeah, I think a lot of valuable things have been said. The low protein diets they were referred to, we used that for a long time in Western Europe, using this crystalline amino acids, which are available to relatively large extent, and the next limiting amino acid also are available or will become available soon. So that really helps to bring down dietary protein content. And yeah, what I want to add is that the whole management around the intestinal microbiome is an important issue. It's a complex issue, but we do have the tools available to evaluate the changes in microbiome composition in the entire digestive tract. And we know that certain stress factors influence the composition and the evolution of the microbiome towards a stable one, which is resistant for colonization with pathogens. So especially in the first 1 or 2 weeks post-weaning, control of, let's say, colonization of the gut, trying to prevent colonization with pathogens and stimulating the ones which are supposed to be beneficial is an important one. And I think there we have more to learn and more to apply in the near future.
Okay, thank you. That was very good. Our last and final question is directed towards Dr. Jansman. Plasma has worked in conjunction with removal of antibiotics. What do you think about using plasma to replace zinc oxide?
Yeah, I think if you look at the research done, including research we also did at our institute, that is that plasma can certainly do a job in diets of post-weaning piglets in terms of supporting gut health and performance and prevention of post-weaning diarrhea. We do see that that's an important thing to mention, that many feed ingredients not only have nutritional characteristics and provide nutritional value to the diet, but also have certain specific, what I sometimes call functional characteristics, contributing to gut health and proper functioning of the gut. And I think plasma proteins are an example of an ingredient which not only contains highly digestible protein, but also proteins with functionality, and the antibodies present or peptides present, which could have a stimulating effect on the development of the intestinal system, are examples of functional constituents in plasma proteins, which can be very helpful. But I think, and that is a trend you see, that almost all feed ingredients, we could look at them from a nutritional perspective, and we should do that, to continue to do that. But we should also look on their effects of the intestinal microbiome, or search for other bioactivities in feed ingredients which we could apply in certain feeding concepts or certain diets, especially in post-weaning diets. And that is something we are exploring more, and also try to apply them in the long run. So yeah, I think the focus should be more on development and application of functional feed ingredients. In this case, we talk about post-weaning piglets now, but you could also think about the application of them in growing pigs or in sows, having different targets in mind, be it either health or welfare, or simply productivity and nutrient efficiency.
Yeah, maybe to add on the plasma point, I think it's our experience with plasma in Canada has been a bit rough over the last couple of years with the PED case. And again, I don't want to come back on that, but we proved that the use of plasma, especially when you have a health challenge, will help to get the pigs better, to have a better start in nursery. So we did trial with PERS positive pigs, and we found that the plasma was helping those pigs to drive better. So again, as Kurt said, if you have a challenge and you want to start to look at it, that's a tool that you have in your toolbox that you can play with and see if it can help you to do the transition. There's a vast proportion of the feed in Canada that may not use plasma today. With the removal of zinc, maybe that's something a lot of people will have to reconsider. So I think that has to be kept in mind. And I like the point about Dr. Jansman about the functionality of ingredient. Fiber is one of them. When we think about fiber for nursery weaned pigs, it may not make sense, to use fiber in that stage of the feeding of the pigs, but the fiber component, inert fiber, a functional component that help those pigs at that point. So same thing, those ingredients that has to be evaluated beyond their nutritional value. There's also other stuff that we need to consider. And also, I think the feeding of those ingredients, if we have plasma or those type of functional ingredients, should we change the amount of time we feed those ingredients? So that instead of feeding our first diet for 7 days, maybe we have to change our approach a bit to feed it for a longer period of time, or to have that ingredient in the next phase, in phase 2, which we were not using it before. So because what we see with the scours sometimes is that we may be able to get control on the issue early weaning, but sometimes when you go from the phase 2 to 3 at that 20-25 pounds range, you may have a bit of a flare-up of scour again. So that transition also for the further diet may need us to think about where do we use those functional ingredients, and how do we adjust our feed program based on that.
So some of the experience we've had here in Western Canada with the plasma has been, even with high health herds, we have seen a very nice response, and it's very consistent in terms of feed intake and growth rate. And again, we can't say just it's been lower health, but we've seen it in higher health herds as well. One thing I just had a question for Dr. Jansman is on the where you have used it in Europe without zinc. we get that nice bump in intake and growth rate for the first 2-3 weeks after weaning. What have you seen post that period? Do you see that difference in weight continue to see that consistently, and it continues on out past the nursery stages, or what's the experience been in Europe?
Yeah, in case we use in some experiments, we have been using zinc oxide just as a reference, and there you'll see that performance is increased during the period you provide the zinc oxide, but when you change to a diet without zinc oxide, you get often a drop in feed intake and growth performance, and that is likely related to the shock the intestinal microbiome gets when it changes to an environment without this high concentration of zinc. So this all deals with the proper management of the intestinal microbiome throughout the entire piglet phase, which is highly important. So sudden changes in diet composition should be prevented. So because that helps to build up a stable microbiome, which is less sensitive for colonization by pathogens. So that's a kind of a downside of using high levels of zinc oxide in the diet, which it's not only a positive story, and taking out is not only has negative effects, but certainly also positive effects, because you can put in that functional ingredients which help the animal to grow sustainably without digestive problems and disorders.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that we missed during our call that you would like to say regarding zinc oxide?
No, for me, I think we cover pretty much everything, although we don't have all the answer. One final point I want to add is that if you work with a customer that is willing to start to look at the reduction of zinc, I think that's what you need to do. Select your customer that are able to monitor performance, that have good management, and then you can start to be confident in your program if you want to start to remove zinc. We are doing it right now with a large integrator in Canada, where in our phase 2 second diet that we used to have 2000 ppm of zinc, we drop our zinc at 250 ppm. We kept the high zinc in the first phase, but the second phase we dropped the zinc, and we've been doing pretty good, with that approach right now. The next step is to go in our first phase and to lower the zinc as well. But and with those people, I think it's easier to do those approach as a commercial feed company. To remove the zinc from all your program and start to sell feed and compete with your competitor that may have still zinc in the diet. That's where people are a bit more careful to do that overboard. But I think as an industry, it's not about being competing versus each other. It's having working towards being able to fix the problem and to get away with the low level of zinc. So I think it's not about, it's working together. And I think that's why we have to share as an industry what we do. And if every feed company can have success without the zinc, we're all going to be good at it. So we need to be transparent and share what we do as an industry, in my mind.
So the one thing I do want to just, I guess, circle back a little bit on what Dr. Jansman touched on. I think the gut microbiome and what's happening pre-weaning and early post-weaning period, I think there's a lot of things there we still don't understand. There's a lot more to be learned there. Dan touched on it a little bit earlier. I think some management things pre-weaning of whether you mix a couple of different litters pre-weaning to set some of the stress and motion ahead of the weaning period. I think there's some stuff there we can learn, probably going back from some of the management things done 20 years ago, what some farmers would have done. I think some of that we can learn from it and how we can overcome some of the stressors of weaning instead of just plucking the pig out of the frying pan, drop them into the nursery, and it's, we can mitigate some of these stressors, I think, but there's a lot to be learned, I think, on what's happening in that gut microbiome, and especially with the younger weaning age we deal with here in North America, it's even a bigger deal versus farms that are weaning at 4 weeks of age. I think there's more of an easier transition there, but with the younger age of weaning, it's a bigger deal for us, and I think there's a lot of work ahead of us here to understand that, and we will continue to learn from Dr. Jansman and his colleagues in Europe what they have done, and hopefully not have to make the same mistakes again, or we can learn from what they're actually doing and get ahead of the game when we do have to.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's all about working together. I think we need to have farm-specific solutions that involves your veterinarian and overall health, and make sure you have sound vaccination protocols and your nutritionist. Because I like to blame the nutritionist. It's usually your fault when there's issues, but so if we work together, we can kind of come with farm-specific solutions. And don't underestimate the value of all these management stuff, like Malachy mentioned, the weanage, the hygiene, the getting pigs started right with focused individual care, getting the environment right, warm room. All these things are critical today. So and these are just adds to it. So I think, yeah, it's just all about farm-specific solutions as a team and all working together as an industry.
Agreed. Well, I'd like to thank all of our panelists for their participation in our discussion and sharing their expertise, as well as the viewers for taking time to learn more about raising pigs without zinc oxide. If you would like more information about the topics covered in this webinar or about the use of plasma proteins, please reach out to us via the contact page on our website at apcproteins.com. Thanks again.